lawyer for the Minnesota suburban cop that shot and killed Philando Castile says he wants the charges against the officer dropped because the attorney claims Castile was high. The 32-year-old Castile was killed July 6th after being pulled over in Falcon Heights, a suburb outside of St. Paul. But it wasn't just Castile in the car. His girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and her small daughter also witnessed the shooting. Prosecutors say Castile was shot at least 7 times after he told police officer Jeronimo Yanez he was armed and had a license to carry a firearm. But in a court memo, Yanez's attorney, Earl Gray, says Castile did not tell the officer he had a permit to carry a gun. Gray also said squad car video confirms Yanez acted in self-defense. Gray adds autopsy results show Castile had high levels of THC in his blood and that a defense expert concludes Castile was allegedly intoxicated during the traffic stop. The defense document reads, quote, but more importantly, why Mr. Castile himself was culpably negligent and was a substantial cause of his own demise. He should not have even been driving while under the influence. He should have showed his hands. He should not have reached for the handgun. Linda Hatchett and Robert Bennett, the attorney for Philando Castile's mother, Valerie Castile, issued a statement that said, quote, this is the design play for the defense of police officers who kill citizens. Always blame the victim. Earl Gray has done this for decades. They want to say, and you have to believe, that Philando was the negligent one. Somehow that matters in excusing or defending the officer. It does not. Now, as the defense attempts to clear Yanez of any wrongdoing in Castile's murder, the Department of Justice is launching a review of the St. Anthony Police Department. The Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or COPS, plans to spend the next 8 to 10 months assessing what the police department needs to do to avoid something like this from happening again.
Looking at its policies, its practices. It would include reviewing thousands of pages of documents, going on ride-alongs. We'll talk about engaging the community in a minute, listening to the community, talking to officers, conducting interviews to try to understand what exactly is working, what is not working, what is being done well, what there's room for improvement.
We welcome this process. We welcome the Justice Department coming in and taking a look at our department, assessing what we're doing. Assessing what we're doing right as well as what we may be doing wrong so that we can be better at serving the communities we police.
The Justice Department says it plans to share the findings of the St. Anthony Police Department investigation with the public. Justice officials also vowed to monitor the suburban police force for 18 months to make sure they make appropriate changes. So let's talk about this again with attorney Anthony Rico as well as Barbara and Cleo. And so, Anthony, when you look at this here, 8 to 10 months, I mean, this is this is what we've seen from the DOJ in other areas. We saw it in Ferguson, we saw it in Cleveland, we saw it in Philadelphia, where the DOJ simply doesn't look at simply one case and one officer. They want to look at the practices of an entire department.
You know, Roland, that's all that sounds good, but the bottom line is that these cases have been going on for decades. Yes. And what needs to happen is that we need to get racists off the police force and not allow them to have badges. These murders continue to happen. You go all the way back to Arthur McDuffie, who was beat to death in Miami in 1980, where a police officer testified that he held him to the ground as his fellow officers beat him to death. All of them were acquitted. You go to Clifford Glover, who shot to death, 9 years old in 1974, where the jury hears a tape with the cops standing over him saying, "Die, little nigga, die." He's acquitted. I'm a defense lawyer. I've represented cops that kill civilians, and I've represented civilians who've killed cops. We have 2 different standards that apply in the criminal justice system. And because of that, we then have to get to the root causes. We have to get racists off the police force. People don't have to be retrained not to shoot people in the back. They already know that. That's not the issue. We don't need video cameras. Errol Garner is strangled to death on a video camera, and grand jury. Walter Scott is shot in the back, and what does one of the jurors say? I can't, in good moral conscience, convict a police officer watching him shoot a man in the back. So what we have at play here is what we have in Ruth. We have racism infused in our criminal justice system, starting from the cop on the street to the people who serve in the jury box, who supports the officers for doing exactly what they want officers to do. And so this whole narrative that it's now Mr. Castile's fault, That's the same narrative that's played out in every one of these cases.
Barbara?
Yes, I'm so glad that Attorney Rico has made these points. I also want to point out that this is why it is so critical that we stop Jeff Sessions from becoming Attorney General of the United States, because the Attorney General will decide what happens with this case in the future. With all due respect, Attorney General Lynch is on her way out. We don't know if cops will be able to pursue their investigation. Hopefully they will. But given the history of Jeff Sessions and his anti-civil rights and his own racist views, he has no business whatsoever being considered to be Attorney General of the United States.
Well,
we often talk about the situation, like the attorney just mentioned, that we need to get racist cops off the force. But racism is so omnipresent. It's so much a part of the system, and it's so normalized in the media and every place else. So we have to do some house cleaning on every level of this culture. We also need black people with consciousness to become cops. Because a lot of the black people who get on the force get into the culture there and try to survive there to keep their job and blend in. I mean, in the case of Sandra Bland, as well as some of these other people who were murdered, a black cop came and co-signed the fraudulent report. So we need to take a look at not only internalized racism, which I think is a big problem, but systematic racism, but going back to internalized racism, because if black people stop tolerating this on the inside and on the outside, it would become dangerous, and people would think twice before they attack and hurt and kill black people.
All right,
right now, they don't feel like it's dangerous to do.
All right. Anthony, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Good being here first thing in the morning.
All right.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.